This morning, the legal fight that Governor Abbott wanted. Will a federal court let Texas keep its buoys on the Rio Grande? The Biden administration is suing Texas. State Rep Eddie Morales joins us from Eagle Pass. Florida approved history textbooks that say that slaves learned valuable skills in captivity. Will Texas now follow Florida's lead when our own school books are up for review in 2025? Aisha Davis on the State Board of Education making her first appearance with us. And how will Texas now keep its voter rolls clean? Republicans wanted to withdraw from a multi-state program, but there's nothing to replace it with. Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins on the uncertainty that lawmakers left the state in before next year's big election.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Let's start the program here with the top political headlines happening across our state. Not a good week at all for Texas A&M University. The Texas Tribune with some solid reporting here. A&M suspended a professor after she reportedly made a critical remark about Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Well, the chancellor at A&M quickly told Patrick's office about it and said it suspended the professor and was even going to fire her. But A&M ended up reinstating her because it could not find any rule that she violated. Houston ISD is eliminating a number of libraries and replacing library spaces with areas for misbehaving students. This is the latest move by the state-appointed superintendent Mike Miles there. Librarians at 28 schools will be eliminated. Library books will remain on the shelves, but some of the library space will now be turned into areas for students who get in trouble. Critics of Mike Miles and the state-appointed takeover are appalled at this. And the mayor of Uvalde has resigned, and he's running for a seat in the state legislature. Don McLaughlin rose to prominence after the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School last spring. He is a Republican who angrily denounced Beto O'Rourke interrupting a news conference last year. As mayor, McLaughlin was also critical of DPS after that massacre. He is running for an open seat after State Rep Tracy King announced his retirement. Let's start this morning on the border and the legal battle over those buoys. Governor Abbott ordered 1,000 feet of big buoys on the Rio Grande to prevent asylum seekers from crossing through the river. But the federal government says those buoys are illegal. The Army Corps of Engineers controls the waterway, not the state of Texas, according to the DOJ. And the feds are asking a judge to remove those buoys. This is all happening in State Rep Eddie Morales' district. He is a Democrat who represents Eagle Pass. Representative Morales, welcome to the program here. You were the only Democrat to co-author Operation Lone Star in the beginning there. What's your reaction to the buoys?
Jason, last session, as the only Democratic joint author of Operation Lone Star bill, we signed on to it because I have a largest district in Texas. It's House District 74. It spans over 750 miles of a shared border with Mexico. And when I was visiting with my constituents, as well as the elected officials, this was the issue that they needed. They needed funding, they needed resources, they needed equipment to be able to address the migrant surge that was taking place. So I was very positive about making sure that these funds were available under Operation Lone Star. However, we did not sign up to what is now taking place. And I think that now there is overreach on the part of the governor's office. And it's sad to say this because even as a Democrat, I'm a moderate to conservative Democrat. And, I've been able to work with the governor's office and with DPS. I support law enforcement. They've supported and endorsed our campaigns in the past. And, we work well with them. As city attorney and city prosecutor, I think that, we are strong on law enforcement, but we didn't sign up for the inhumane treatment that we're seeing that's coming out of the DPS emails, as well as the conversations that I'm having with, for example, Mr. Urbina, who owns the pecan orchard right by the riverbanks. He was negotiating an agreement with DPS, and overnight, DPS just took over his property without a lease agreement, without the owner's permission to enter the property. And more importantly, they did it when Operation Lone Star, we specifically, Representative Tracy King and I specifically passed an amendment on Operation Lone Star that provided that the governor's office could not use Operation Lone Star funds to either condemn or take private property away. And it was supported and it passed. And so the actions that are taking place are not in line with Operation Lone Star and its bill.
Have you spoken to the governor or the governor's office about this?
I have sent repeated letters to the governor's office. I have not spoken directly to the governor, but I have to some of his, you know, leadership.
What's the response?
They're saying they're going to take a look at it.
You think Texas can lead on immigration? Immigration, of course, is a federal issue. What can Texas do in that sector?
Well, and I know I'm very cognizant as an attorney for the last 23 years. I'm cognizant of that issue, but I think that there is precedence. Governor Schwarzenegger, when he was trying to increase the EPA standards in California, the federal government told him that is within the full purview of the federal government. You can't be more restrictive as the state of California than we are. He challenged them and he actually won. So I think there's precedence there. I think under our invasion clause, also the Texas Constitution, we can rely on that. And lastly, the fact that, again, Congress has failed us over the last 30 years to pass this. So we've had to take it on our own. And more than anything, I think the push is there when people especially find out that there's all these things that are taking place to migrants unnecessarily, the kidnappings, the sexual assaults, and children being sold in the black market. Also, I think all those issues, if you're able to take that away, this billion-dollar industry that the cartels and the human smugglers have, and take it away from them, and the state of Texas actually assume that process, I think we'd be better off. Everyone would, and we'd have a solution to this issue.
Representative Morales, we appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, a lot of Texans rely on broadband to watch this program every Sunday morning. You might remember Congress gave Texas $3.3 billion to expand broadband infrastructure to rural parts of the state. Turns out there's some fine print with that money. Certain regulations are tied to the cash and could prevent some parts of the state from actually benefiting. Ian Mitra is a senior managing editor of the Texas Tribune in Austin. Ian, good to see you again here. Can Texas cut through this red tape, or is it really in jeopardy here?
Well, it's going to be particularly challenging because rural providers will have to show a connection with a major line of credit with a major bank, and so that's going to be tough for some providers who are in smaller areas don't necessarily have those ties. So there's an opportunity to provide feedback in the next month in terms of how the plan will work, but they may have to use some creativity if they can't adjust the requirements.
Another interesting story the Tribune did. Bookstores here in Texas and bookseller associations are suing Texas over its new law to ban sexually explicit material from schools. What's the argument here, and does this lawsuit stand a chance?
Yeah, and this was filed in federal court, and it's really a constitutional argument primarily. Certainly the bookstores are talking about how it's an impossible mandate, but really what they're looking at is the aspect of it being unconstitutional because this is a law with that they're saying that has vague and overbroad speech and is very hard to regulate, and so there's a question of like whether this actually constitutionally valid because of that vague language. So that's the part that they're going to argue. Certainly it'll depend on kind of how the courts interpret that, and certainly there will probably be appeals after whatever verdict comes.
Indeed so. Ian, thanks. Back to you in just a moment here.
Coming up next here, will Texas toy with how history is taught? Florida did, and that concerns Aisha Davis on the Texas State Board of Education. And how will Texas keep its voter rolls clean? Republicans removed this state from the only way available now, and there's no plan to replace it. Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins on what this will mean to the next election. Inside Texas Politics, back in just a moment.
Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Education advocates here are closely watching what's happening in Florida. The State Board of Education in Florida there approved brand new textbooks that say that slaves learned valuable skills while they were in captivity. Why does it matter here to Texas? Well, this state reviews its own history textbooks in just 18 months. Aisha Davis is on the State Board of Education.
Let's start out with what's happening in Florida, making all kinds of news there. It just approved curriculum that says some slaves acquired valuable skills while they worked in servitude, suggesting there's an upside to slavery. What's your reaction to that?
I was very disappointed when I was made aware of that language. We had something similar here in Texas last year where involuntary relocation was suggested to be used instead of saying slave trade in our standards. So I'm very disappointed that history is becoming so distorted. To say something as egregious as that. We do have our standards review for history in 2025, and so I will be anticipating some of that language may be offered up in Texas, but very disappointed, and will definitely be on the watch to make sure that doesn't come in Texas.
Yeah, so Texas is looking at all of its history courses in a year and a half in 2025. You think some of that Florida language might creep into Texas?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of things that I've seen in Florida have been coming here to Texas. And so I'm hoping that our curriculum standards committees, they see how tumultuous that is. They learn from the involuntary relocation language of last year. And they're really, really more in tune with making sure that history is accurate for our students.
A couple of years ago, you did get the board to unanimously pass a social studies curriculum for African Americans. I think it's similar to or on a parallel course with a Mexican American studies course. How has that been received statewide?
Oh, everybody has been so excited about the course. We have districts everywhere across Texas who are adopting it, thousands of students that are enrolled in the course, and it's growing every year. Actually, now we have a new course, Native American Studies, that's being piloted in Grand Prairie ISD. So it's really opened up a door for a lot of our innovative courses, looking at a lot of different cultures. So it's very exciting for students to get to see themselves when they learn.
Looking back, are you surprised that passed unanimously?
In those days, I was not. A lot of the conversations about critical race theory didn't come until after we passed that African American Studies course. And then after that, it started to be like, well, let's take another look at this course and perhaps change some things. So at that time in 2020, when we unanimously adopted it, there was no discussion of this critical race theory. It was a lot of celebration about different cultures and classes, like the Mexican American Studies, African American Studies, and now we're in a different space.
School starts in Texas next month. Last year there was a furor over library books. What do you expect this year will entail?
Unfortunately, my board did veto the librarian certification a couple of months ago.
And tell us what that means.
So as of right now, we're not even 100% sure, because in the history of our board, the librarian certification has never been vetoed. So right now it's been sent back to the State Board of Educator certification. They're going to look to see if they can send us something that we can approve. Some of the reasons my colleagues didn't approve it was because they said it was too many bad books in libraries. They didn't like associations that were giving different types of information to our librarians to make sure that they had all the tools they need to be the best they could for our students. So you still do have some folks who are really fighting hard against library books and librarians, but to counter that, you have a really strong force of teachers and parents who support libraries and support books and support students being able to read whatever it is they need to read. So unfortunately, books still are under attack, but you have more people who are coming to defense.
Ms. Davis, thanks for the time.
Thank you so much.
Now to a question this morning that Texas cannot yet answer. How will this state keep its voter rolls clean to keep people from voting in Texas and maybe another state as well? Republican lawmakers here withdrew from a multi-state program that did that. Problem is, there's nothing to replace it with. So where does that leave Texas counties, which are in charge of voting and keeping the rolls clean? Here's Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins. Judge, welcome back to the program here. Does Dallas County have a system in place to check voter rolls, or has Dallas been relying on the state to do that for duplicates in other states?
So we use ERIC, which is a nonpartisan, nationwide nonprofit that lets us know when people move to other states so we can take them off the rolls here. We send a letter out to people. If they respond, they have moved, they're taken off. If they don't respond, then they're held in suspense until we hear from them.
So Republican lawmakers in this state say, listen, we're done with Eric, over hysteria and misinformation that has caused them to walk away from it. How confident are you that Dallas County's voter rolls are going to be clean when voters go to the polls in the presidential primaries? That's 7 months away.
Yeah, not very confident, because what's happened is by walking away from Eric, as you point out, with no evidence that it's anything but an effective program, some crazy conspiracy theories that have no basis in fact from far-right pundits. So what we're going to be looking for now is our Republican leaders will come up with their own system, and that system will likely purge a lot more young people and minority voters. You know, we should be focused on winning over the hearts and minds of new voters, not what the Republicans are doing, which is artificially keeping the voter rolls low so that they can win with the same group that they've had and not allow the younger, the new transplants, renters who move to easily register.
How often did Dallas County get notices that there might be duplicate voters, someone registered in Dallas County and also registered in Colorado Springs, Colorado, or Oklahoma City? Was that often?
Often, yes. ERIC was very effective. It's the most effective system in the United States, and because there's so many states involved in ERIC, you're able to get really good data. You know, in a place like Dallas, an urban area like Dallas with a lot of mobile people, someone may move to Colorado or California or move from there. And so we would be able to share information and make sure that we didn't have people double registered in the same election, you know, because that's illegal.
How big of a deal is this?
It's a big deal. We'll have to see what happens with the state's new system, but it will, in all likelihood, disenfranchise people and knock people off the voter rolls that if we used ERIC would not be knocked off the voter rolls. Everybody should want election integrity, but here's what that means. Election integrity means that everyone who is eligible to vote should be registered to vote and be able to have their voice heard. And those who aren't eligible should be excluded from the voter rolls. We need to work on winning the hearts and minds of all the voters, not shrinking the voter pool as the Republicans in Austin are trying to do.
Texas law says the Secretary of State has to develop its own system to check for duplicate voters, which you kind of referenced there, or find a private sector company to do this. There's nothing else out there besides ERIC right now. Do you think the state can comply with its own law?
You know, it either will not do that, and then we'll have more duplicates and problems, which the state will then claim as evidence of some sort of fraud that they need to make it harder for people to vote, or it will do it, but do it in a haphazard, hasty way that leads to people being knocked off the rolls. And the ones to watch for are young people, minorities, and renters who move around, right? Because if you're living in a house for 10 years, you're probably going to be fine. But if you're moving, if you're young and mobile, if you're a minority voter, historically, those have been the people that the Texas Secretary of States in the past, not this one, but past Secretary of States have gone after to knock off the rolls, as they did on their bogus, undocumented persons gambit 3 or 4 years ago that led to the Secretary of State being kicked out of office.
That was David Whitley on that one. Judge, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
The roundtable is ready in just a moment. All right, time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. I am Mitra, back with us from the Texas Tribune in Austin. Bud Kennedy is a columnist at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Ashley Godot, anchor and managing editor of political content at KVUE News in Austin. Let's start with you in that big legal fight over the border buoys. The feds are suing to have those removed. This seems like exactly what Governor Abbott wants to play out publicly here. Is there any downside politically for him?
Well, it certainly depends on the audience that Abbott's speaking to, but when Abbott's talking with his base, this is very much at the top of their list of concerns. So it's a winning issue for him when he's talking about it from a standpoint of the barrier and not necessarily the standpoint of like allegations made through a trooper of what they observed at the border. But highlighting federal inaction on the border issue is a winning issue for Abbott.
Bud?
He continues to score points at the border, just as he has by busing migrants to other cities. But remember, he talks a lot about fentanyl, but fentanyl doesn't come across the river. Fentanyl comes in through the main gate. This is a people problem. He just bragged a few months ago that he was working with the border states to stem the flow of people across the border. Now all of a sudden he's putting up buoys.
And if he loses on this too, Ashley, if he loses in court, it's still probably a win for him publicly, isn't it?
It's exactly what Governor Greg Abbott has wanted for months now. He's been testing to see just how far he can go, just what Texas can get away with when it comes to the border against the federal government. And even if he loses, it's a win because he'll be able to say, look, I took action. We were able to stop people from coming across, and look at what Biden and the Democrats did. They overturned it, and now we're back to what he will describe as chaos at the border. He's going to win either way.
Let's shift off to the other story we mentioned earlier in the program here, the explosive story from the Texas Tribune that A&M investigated a professor for a comment she made about Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. How did all this play out, and tell our viewers about it?
Yeah, well, my colleagues Kate McGee and James Bargon reported how a professor was giving a speech to some medical students related to just harm reduction strategies and the whole aspect of opioid abuse, and talked about a lack of progress legislatively on some things related to this, and kind of mentioned the lieutenant governor. This got back to the lieutenant governor, who apparently, through my colleagues' reporting, we found out that he reached out, his chief of staff reached out to John Sharp, the chancellor of the A&M system, and she was formally censured, the professor.
But talk about why this is such a big deal.
Well, you know, this wasn't really a left-right issue. She talked about harm reduction, and that's something that Governor Abbott and the House supported. They supported more money going to harm reduction and less to punishment. It died in the Senate. Dan Patrick in the Senate just wanted more punishment and locking people up. You know, she made an offhand comment. Imagine if she'd said something about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had called Chancellor Sharp the next day wanting her punished. Imagine the reaction there would have been.
Good point, Ashley.
You know, I just think this is going to have a real chilling effect on, you know, universities and professors, particularly research professors, and their ability to talk about things and what things they think would make differences. If every time you say something that you think is going to be perceived badly against someone, you know, someone just tattletales on you to the lieutenant governor. This is very, I think, harmful. It's not a good look for the lieutenant governor's office, and it's certainly not a good look for Texas A&M.
Ashley, good point on that. I think you're right on that. A chilling effect indeed, because you never know who might be in the audience and who might go tattletale. Guys, thank you so much. I am Bud. Ashley, we appreciate your time as always. And thank you for watching as well. We're back again next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics, and hope you can join us then. Take care.